Alrighty then. Let's see how much time I waste actually just sitting down and rambling. Hello, welcome again to another episode, installment, whatever you want to call it, of Some Idiot Reads. I am Cy. I'm some idiot. Hello. And much as I was doing last week, I'm going to be picking back up with the dispatches from Appalachia, courtesy of Coyote Wallace. You can see right here. You can find him on medium.com. Does some fantastic stuff, has a wide array of these articles. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful. And just the titling on this. Smoke on the mountain and fire below. I feel like that's a song lyric, but it's well used. Lost Volunteers of Appalachia. Hope lies in the hunting of swine. You can't tell me that you don't see that and go, I'm curious. What do we have here? The pen, the page, and the brick with paper wings. Like, dude. How does that only have 6 views? That is such a compelling fucking title. Anyway, so I did my first read through of these last week. It was actually, amusingly enough, I didn't plan on it. It was, I think, the 3 that I have actively written in the past. Not written. Jesus, no, I didn't write these. Coyote wrote these. I read these. It's for the 3 that I have written. Read it. I'm literate. I don't think I've actually gotten through some of the rest of these, though, so this will be fun for me as well, reading through these. I'm going to try for 3. We will see as far as that goes, but definitely throwing it out there. Coyote also does have something coming out here. I believe he said mid-October is what it's on track for. He has his book releasing, and I know the full title of the book. I just know it by its shorthand 9 times out of 10. Let me look this up again. I want to make sure I get the full title, because the full title of this. Look, dude. Whatever else you may want to say on his writing, he's got title work down. That is honestly, that is an art form. He has got this so down, and I don't want to not do this one properly. All right, hold on. No, there's a way I can find this. No. Can you tell I'm prepared for this? All right. Come on. Son of a bitch. All right. It's going to take me too long to go ahead and try and find the actual full title. It's American Mystic. I want to say it's like the American Mystic, The Life and Times of Jimmy... No. The Death and Rebirth of Jimmy Wonderful. American Mystic, The Death and Rebirth of Jimmy Wonderful. I want to say that's the full title of it. If I'm wrong, please crucify me, man. It's okay. I deserve that. It's warranted. I've got, the Jesus hair and everything going on. It's a thing. But mid-October is my understanding for when that's going to be coming on out here. Or roughly thereabouts. It's soon. It's coming soon. And I absolutely want to plug the hell out of this. Literally, as soon as that thing freaking drops, I am ordering myself a copy, and I highly recommend any of you listening to this, you do as well. I will be including a link to the Nightmare Press website, who is his publisher, and they are awesome for picking him up. And once it actually is fully released and available to the public, I will also be plugging that. So keep a loose eye out for it. You will hear me rant and ramble about that, because I am just so freaking excited over this dude actually getting a published work out there. Like, legitimately, so deeply, absolutely excited for it. It's magical. Anyway, so, and that's, that's part of it with this, is I absolutely love the dude's writing. I want to read more of it. I want to get more of this out there, get more eyes, or I guess ears, depending on if, you're just listening to this into the background. Just get more attention to it. So I will go ahead and I'll have the links to the Medium page in the description. By all means, go there, read the articles yourself, go through and look through them, give some more views, give some engagement, some commentary, all that stuff. My glasses have microfiber on them. Give all that necessary stuff there. Give some love. And, yeah. Help another writer out. Because he deserves it. Now, my original intent with this video was to actually sit down and just leap right into some of the reading. But I came across a thing, like literally I want to say an hour or two ago. Came across this thing and I want to go on this journey of discovery and a little bit of digging with all of you right now and draw some attention to this and provide my commentary on it because, yeah. So, what we have here is a breaking story that is out there. We will go with the first one. NBC News. This article was posted 21 minutes ago. Ohio sheriff suggests residents keep list of Kamala Harris yard sign addresses. Now, NBC News. Okay. Portage County Sheriff Bruce Zuchowski used anti-immigrant rhetoric and denounced both the vice president and her supporters. Which, okay, whatever. Sheriff in Ohio, who made disparaging remarks about Vice President Kamala Harris and immigrants on social media, suggested residents compile a list of addresses where they see yard signs in support of the Democratic presidential nominee. In a public Facebook post Friday, Portage County Sheriff Bruce Zuchowski used anti-immigrant rhetoric and denounced both Harris and her supporters. And I have seen the Facebook post. I think it's still up. It might have been deleted. I don't remember. But this is the actual text. I'm going to try and read it as it is written. When people ask me, what's going to happen if the flip-flopping laughing hyena wins? I say, write down the addresses of all the people who had her signs in their yards. So, when the illegal human locust, which she supports, need places to live, will already have the addresses of their new families, who supported their arrival. Okay. Zuchowski, the sheriff's office, and the Harris campaign did not immediately respond to requests for comment Friday, Monday afternoon. It also included TV images mentioning Aurora, Colorado, and Springfield, Ohio, towns that have become flashpoints in the immigration debate. Please don't mind the cat yelling in the background. Bones is not happy about being left out. I feel like that's just a running thing. To clarify, I do need to keep the door shut because sometimes my roommate goes walking by and my room opens off to the living room. So it's like, just keep this sequestered and contained until I can get like a green screen or something set up. Springfield in particular has been subject to security threats amid baseless claims about Haitian immigrants. Yep. And this is just further adding context. Okay, so I wanted to at least draw some quick attention to this. This is horrendously fucked. And I think that needs to be called out. Like, news outlets are going like, oh, can you please get comment? Can you please, give us your information on this? What did you mean by that? Let me see. Where was one? Okay, you know what? Let's go ahead and go to another side of it. Fox 8 News. Local sheriff on his post. A little misinterpreted. Let's see. Posted an update Tuesday afternoon saying, as Chief Law Enforcement Officer of Portage County, I sworn to protect all citizens of my county. Recently, I placed a post on my personal Facebook page that may have been a little misinterpreted. I, as the elected sheriff, do have a First Amendment right, as do all citizens. If citizens of Portage County want to elect an individual who supported open borders, which I personally visited twice, and neglected to enforce the laws of our country, then that is our prerogative. With elections, there are consequences. That being said, I believe that those who vote for individuals with liberal policies have to accept the responsibility for their actions. I am a lawman, not a politician. Okay. Right. So, we have that one. Isn't that fun? Isn't the news great? Isn't the world that we live in right now in modern day America here at the tail end of 2024? Isn't it just so wonderful? Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and just call this one out, and I'm not going to try and harp too terribly long on this because I really want to get on to the reading. I actually was really looking forward to doing that. But I felt this is my sandbox. And if I'm going to be standing up here, I'm just going to take a minute to go ahead and call this out. That is fucking disgusting, Sheriff. That is disgusting, Bruce. We're going to just call you Bruce. Is it okay if I call you Bruce? I don't really give a shit because I'm not going to sit here and try and like mangle your name when I'm speaking at speed. Okay, Bruce? Here's the fucking deal. Yes, you are an elected official. And yes, you do have a First Amendment right to post and say any number of things that you want. How the fucking ever. You do not get to ignore the fact you are in a position of power and authority, and your words have meaning. You are not an idiot. I am sincerely hoping you are not as big of an idiot as you are implying by throwing out that garbage ass, I have a right to post this. No fucking shit, Sherlock. You absolutely do. But people are going to listen to that. And frankly, it hits different if I were to say that kind of racist garbage. Like, let's just set the side for a moment. If I were to say something along those lines, it means a different fucking thing than if you, as a law enforcement officer, as the tippy top of the pyramid in your fucking county, you are in a position of authority. You are in a position where you can violate the rules because who's going to fucking say a damn thing? And besides, you control the fucking paperwork. You have means at your disposal for things such as intimidation, whether you intend it or not. That is there. That comes part and parcel with the responsibilities that you had vested in you when you were elected. And what you are doing, whether it legally amounts to it or not, is tantamount to voter intimidation. You are actively suppressing other people's free speech by simply saying, well, I'm allowed to. You carry the weight of your position. And if you didn't want that, if you did not want to live with that responsibility, then frankly, you shouldn't have fucking run. If you don't want responsibility, don't fucking engage. Again, referencing back on my end here. Right now, I've got a small fucking platform. I'm a small fucking soapbox. It'd be nice if that shifted at some point in the future. That'd be fucking fantastic. That'd be cool as hell. But you damn well better believe I've put a significant amount of thought into, holy shit, what all is going to want. Like, let's say something, it just went completely fucking wild, and I wound up as popular as, like, fucking Markiplier, Jacksepticeye, fucking, hell, if I wound up in the likes of views for, like, you know, War Graphics with Simon, I can't remember your name because your voice is so damn buttery, or even, like, you know, personal one I enjoy also, Some More News, or any of the fucking pundits over on the right side. Can you tell where my politics lie? If I were to be so lucky as to actually have that kind of visibility, I am fully fucking cognizant that at that point, the things I say and the things I do and the things I endorse may well be taken seriously by people that would look at me in a position of authority. And that is a thing I have to reckon with. Am I okay with that? And near as I can tell, I am. But I have reckoned with that. I know that is a thing that comes with any degree of fame or responsibility. That is the thing you take on with that. And if it's not something you can handle, if you want to just have your freedom to say whatever the fuck you want, cool. Don't take a fucking position where people's literal lives are in your hands. Law enforcement especially. Celebrities talking? What the fuck ever. I mean, yeah, that does have its own host of things, but it is a different fucking ball game than being a law enforcement officer and talking about taking down people's names. That is some Gestapo bullshit, dude. What the fuck? Now again, I wish to make it clear, I am just some idiot right now. I'm some idiot that reads shit. I'm an armchair philosopher, armchair politics, armchair a lot of crap. I read stuff. I play games. I've got some stuff for some other stuff to go up at some point. You may as well call me fucking, what was the dude's name? The one dude during the Bush administration. Somewhere, somehow, something is going to happen. Whatever. Anyway, I am fucking going sideways. I'm just some idiot. I should not be taken as a verifiable news outlet by any sort, any questions. This was my immediate gut response, reading what is available as of 7:30 p.m. on September 17th. That is a Monday. Monday? Tuesday. I can't even remember what day it is. As of that time period, and as of my first read, within a couple of hours of me becoming aware of this, these are my gut responses. These should not be necessarily taken as something that you should act upon. I highly encourage, think about it yourself. Think about your own interpretations of this and, what you consider to be right and accurate. I've tried to sit down and enumerate, at least at a base level, my initial gut concerns with this and how absolutely fucked that is. And, yeah. But I more than anything else, though, since I got it, like I said, if I got a sandbox, I may as well go ahead and use it for stuff like this as it emerges. That being said, we're going to step away from that now. Back to stuff for Coyote. So I have several of these articles open right now. And I'm just going to go page at a time. Just like, go to the next tab, go to the next tab, go to the next tab. How much time have I wasted on doing this so far? Let me see. Okay, wait, apply. Okay. Whee! I'm so unprepared. How much have I done? Well, I've already done 15 minutes. Well, that was actually a lot less than I thought it would be. All right, cool. So, first one we're going to dive into for tonight. Now, I read part 1 of this last time. Was a beautiful read. It involved a switch. So, this is a 3-part set of articles. We're going to go through parts 2 and 3 here. Poverty, Despair, and the Manufacture of Human Cogs. Part 2. This was originally posted on April 25th, 2023 by Coyote Wallace. Editor's note. This is part 2 of an analysis of generational poverty in the Appalachian region of eastern Kentucky. In part 1, Game Stupid Rednecks Play, we looked at the region's poverty and got a taste of the physical hazards of typical boyish games that could send you to the ER and your family into an inescapably deep debt hole. The story of every young man in Appalachia eventually leads back to what I like to call the human cog machine. Generational poverty that afflicts eastern Kentucky and the rest of the mountainous region is not without purpose. It is not without function, and it has long served a very specific cause. That cause is what first drew the Irish, Scottish, English, and Welsh immigrants to the region, and it is one that every boy in Kentucky who grew up staring in awe at his father's dust-blackened face knew all too well. Feared by some, and championed with a fevered religious intensity by others, the mining of coal from deep within the very heart of the mountains themselves. What follows is a picture that is I know there's a terminology for this, I don't actually know it, but it's the terraced hillside of what clearly was a mining operation. Tagged as Pikeville, Kentucky. Now, you might ask yourself, what sort of man would willingly descend miles beneath the earth into a pitch blackness that only those born blind or have stumbled upon the very depths of this planet might truly know? What manner of person would knowingly trade days from their lives? For there is no respirator that keeps all the coal dust from our lungs, and black lung still smothers the men of Appalachia in open air. Fools? No. The mountains do not suffer fools, and neither do miners. No fool who has ever walked into a deep mine has ever walked back out. Some of the most brilliant engineers, operators, and electricians that you could ever meet are coal miners. Some may not have the degrees to prove it, but you can bet your bottom dollar that a single coal miner is worth 10 men who trade the stock of the coal company for which he gives his life. What follows is a picture of a coal mine, and based on the appearance, well, it's a black and white grayscale image, that is most definitely coal mining going on there. Brave? Absolutely. The mining of coal is one of the most dangerous professions in the United States, and not just because of the obvious causes either. Injury and maiming are shockingly common from the job, and almost everyone in Appalachia knows at least one person who has lost fingers, hands, or toes to crushing. The true killer is black lung, or coal workers' pneumocinosis. The disease is caused by the long-term inhalation of coal dust, which over time causes heavy scarring to the lung tissue. The afflicted can look forward to inflammation of the lungs and fibrosis, which restrict breathing, and, ultimately, necrosis of the lung tissue itself, which, of course, leads to death. Mostly, what you need in order to be a good coal miner, however, is the desire to feed your family. That's the secret ingredient. That's the original blend of herbs and spices. Nobody goes underground for themselves. They do it for the people they love. Nobody buys themselves years of pain, choking to death as their lungs rot away, simply because they want nice things. You can work at McDonald's and scrape together enough for a new television. You can take jobs cutting grass and come up with your share of rent in a shitty trailer park. But when you want the sort of money that buys the best for your family, well, there's only one place you can get that. And Big Daddy Coal knows it. In Pikeville, there were no opportunities outside of the mines, save for a single call center located in the middle of the sleepy Appalachian town. This particular little call center paid surprisingly well, and it paid weekly, but the work was horrible. If you've never called a man in Missouri and asked him to donate to the Fraternal Order of Police, allow me to assure you, it is not fun. If you are a police officer in Missouri and you are reading this, everyone there hates you, and you should leave immediately. As a note, I absolutely love that. Sidebar on this. I've never actually worked in one of those kind of call center spaces. Well, actually, no, I take it back. I did work in one of those. It was for callbacks with Home Depot. Like those little cards you can fill out, like, hey, fill this out and you may get a giveaway of a thing or something like that. I don't know. This was like 20 years ago. It was before I could drink illegally. But it was I did that sort of like cold call. It wasn't even cold calling. It was callbacks. But those things suck. I hate that kind of job. It is demanding. It is all about getting in the volume. And it is soul sapping. You are just a machine. You are a human cog in that sort of a thing. I've not done coal mining. I think the most demanding physical labor job I have done was working a season in a wood yard busting firewood. Which admittedly wasn't a hell of a job. Enjoyable in its own kind of like simple way. Not something I really want to go back and go do. I know at least one of you that's listening to this probably worked with me on that job. That was definitely a time of things. There was one day I would always go out there with 2 liters full of water. And I remember one day very distinctly, and if the person I'm referencing who worked with me there is listening to this, he'll remember this. There was one day specifically, I knew the temperature was going to get hot, and it was always like 10 degrees hotter in the wood yard than it was anywhere else, because, wood absorbs heat, releases it slowly. It's going to be terribly bad. So it was already slated to be like 90, I want to say, which meant the wood yard was going to be at least 100. That's just sitting there and not taking into account anything else. So I knew that day was going to be bad. And I took 6 2-liters with me that I'd filled with water. They were old things of Mountain Dew. And I'd filled them all up with water. I've got 12 liters of water with me for this day. And it is already sweltering at like 7 in the morning. You can hear Revelry being played from the military base nearby. And all the other grounds crew, they went off to the job. They had to go cut down some trees for that day. I'm not chipper bitch for it. I'm just in the lot busting wood. And what stands out to me for that day is by the time it got done and everyone was back, I was delirious from the heat. And it wasn't until I got my stuff together to go home that I realized, one, I had gone through the entirety of all 6 2-liters, and I was still dehydrated. And I did not, it stands out in my mind, I didn't actually have to take a leak. I just had sweat everything out. Random side anecdote. Does not compare to, black lung. Hey, random anecdote, because thoughts go in directions. All right. So, call center. Eventually, even that collapsed beneath the weight of accusations that the place was actually a front for a drug operation. Small town rumors can be extremely lethal for a business in Appalachia, and it did not take long before the doors were shuttered. The desperation serves as a sort of crucible, but what are the impurities, you might ask? Those of us who are too stubborn, too detached, or simply too scared to go down into the dark. We become the outlaws of the region, the carriers of the great scourge of liberal ideology and the opioids epidemic. Look upon us and no fright. Look upon us and no woe. That's actually far closer to the truth than you want it to be. That's far closer to the truth than I want it to be. The injured miners are spat out by the coal companies after their bodies are used up. The injured miners that are spat out by the coal companies after their bodies are used up are given a check, and most often company insurance provided medical care, which means painkillers for their injuries. The disability they receive does not cover or make for an adequate living wage, and thus they sell the painkillers to the younger generation, who then in turn sell them to keep from having to go work underground. There simply aren't any other opportunities, and starvation will either make you brave enough to face the blackness beneath the mountains, or it will make you brave enough to face the law. There are no cowards among the poor in these mountains. Cowardice is the luxury of a full belly. For many of us, our futures were bought and sold before we were even born. The politicians that entrusted us to encourage growth and prosperity of their towns instead took generous campaign donations from a mechanical beast with many heads. The beast breathed fire and smoke, and it was known by names: Arch Mineral, Colmac, Ramaco, and Webster, and, for its favor, it asked for the blood, sweat, and life's breath of Appalachia's young men. They would be human cogs and help the great beast devour the mountain and give thanks and praise to it as they did. Generational poverty is not a disease you can cure. Generational poverty is a tool wielded by those in power to create the cheapest possible machine for extracting coal from beneath the Appalachian Mountains, the Kentucky coal miner. And what follows is a picture of what is most assuredly a coal miner. It's well worth going to the article and looking at that, because in a real objective sense, it is uncomfortable and horrifying to look at. It's a gaunt face. It is clearly a human being that has been exposed to conditions that no human being should be exposed to, in perfect honesty. He looks like a revenant, would be the best way I would describe it. And it's really hard for me using these words right now, looking at this, because I can recognize the amount of crap that sits behind and what sort of, I myself have not actually, personally dealt with that. I myself am not from Appalachia. I'm from the Gulf Coast. I'm from hurricane country, but I can understand what would take people to this kind of level, and heartbreaking doesn't feel like it's the right word for looking at that. And I do want to call out, this was an excellent, in the context of the article, this was a good image to use right here. I feel this really is impactful. This ties it together and slams it together in a way that the words themselves don't do. Heartbreaking doesn't feel like the right word. That feels too soft. This is what happens if you took the concept and the feel of the word heartbreaking and you sharpened a shiv out of it in prison. That is what I'm looking at here. And that is the feeling that is evoked by looking at this picture. And it's somewhere in between the gauntness of the cheekbones and the vitality and awareness in the eyes. You look at the whole and it's unsettling, but then you look at those two things, just that curve in the left cheekbone in isolation, and then the eyes themselves in isolation. It's horrifying. And going off of this, I have no reason to doubt this on Coyote's end. this is a part of American history. This is a part that exists there and is baked in. And that's pretty fucked. But it is a reality, and it's one that we need to stare fully in the face, and we need to acknowledge, and we need to recognize. And, okay, that was actually the end of the article. Awesome. So, okay, wow, that was a great way to actually wrap this one up. I'm giving this a clap. Clap. Okay. Tune into part 3 of our story, Death by Dollars, for a personal look at the way generational poverty grinds regional healthcare under its feet. So, yeah, that was Poverty, Despair, and the Manufacture of Human Cogs, part 2. Now, we're going to part 3. Part 3, Death by Dollars. Editor's note. This is part 3 of an analysis of generational poverty in the Appalachian region of eastern Kentucky. In part 1, Game Stupid Rednecks Play, we looked at regional poverty and got a taste of the physical hazards of the typical boyish games that could send you to the ER and your family into an inescapably deep debt hole. In part 2, The Cog Machine, we explored what happens when the young and undereducated try to find jobs in a place where white collar means the shirt you wear for Sunday best and special occasions. In part 3, we look at the true cost of lacking healthcare in the region. In rural regions, such as eastern Kentucky, according to the Rural Health Information Hub, link provided in the text, health disparities include geographic isolation, lower socioeconomic status, higher rates of health risk behaviors, limited access to healthcare specialists and subspecialists, and limited job opportunities. Rural residents are also less likely to have employer-provided health insurance coverage, and, if they are poor, often are not covered by Medicaid. All of these factors play a part in the end of our tale. What then follows is a picture of, quintessential trailer park. I can't tell if it's a picture from a trailer park window or from a car. It looks like it's being, in motion. But it's a trailer park, or at least a lot where there's some trailers. I know myself, I grew up not so much in a trailer park, but I do remember my siblings. I don't think my siblings actually even knew this part. No, they weren't even born. God, okay. So I grew up. I spent my formative years. We lived in a trailer, way out on the outskirts. Not even the outskirts of town. It was outside of town, for where I grew up at. It might be the outskirts now, but, that was close to 40 years ago. It's the outskirts now, but 40 years ago, it was way out there. But we were at the, tail end, way off down a dirt road. And on my dad's end, my dad was, he worked on tugboats. He actually had his back broken, while he was on the Mississippi. Side story on this, he was going up and down, the ship trying to find a captain. And I don't know exactly what happened with it. And I can't really ask him because he passed away a few years back. But for whatever reason, he fell out of the boat and into the Mississippi. And in the course of being caught in the current, slammed up against something, log, something in the water, don't know what. But it broke his back, didn't paralyze him, but he did wind up having to have 2 metal plates put into his back. That was a lifelong thing for him. So, but it was during that time we grew up in, it wasn't even a trailer park, it was just a trailer in the middle of the pine woods. Just playing at a dirt road. God, that was forever ago. Anyway, all right. Chasing that old generational poverty rabbit always leads me back here to the death by dollars. Those of us who grew up in the shadows of the Appalachian Mountains have an almost gallows sense of humor that is innately baked into us. I've heard more people threaten to be shot than I've heard praises for my work, and I imagine it'll always be that way. A shockingly high number of the students I went to school with have passed away from drugs or the mines, and there's a certain sense among us that we endure these hardships, either through the grace of God or simply because it is our lot to do so. There's an old saying, the mines either kill you too soon or they'll kill you too slow, and I have not a single doubt in my heart to the veracity of that statement. Healthcare among the poor is one of the most shockingly appalling situations that you can imagine. Confirmed. There are particular hollows and branches of back roads where it's not uncommon to witness children playing in the creeks or roads with severe cases of thrush wringing their mouths. There have been times when I myself have had to stretch out my epilepsy medicine far thinner than it should have been, and the neglect of injury is commonplace. This is sadly not unique to our region, but when coupled with the fact that so much of the landscape is left undeveloped and underfunded, you begin to run into a certain human cost. My mother was always the greatest person I knew, and when she was diagnosed with dementia and Alzheimer's, I endeavored to care for her. It wasn't easy, but when you're poor, and the only other options are the sort of assistive facilities that are made available to the poor, you fight like hell for the people you love. I had help. My stepfather and my wife at the time, but it was very hard. Harder than anything I've ever done, or perhaps will do. One night at around 1 a.m., I was awoken by my stepfather in a panic. My mother was bleeding heavily from the inside. Her whole bed beneath her was soaked red. She'd coughed and ruptured a hernia inside of her, and the results were catastrophic. I did everything I was supposed to do. Everything they say for you to do. I immediately called 911, and I kept talking to her. This was my mom, after all. This was a woman who had fought for me when I was a scruffy goth kid getting picked on by the establishment. The woman who had held me when I didn't know if I was epileptic or I had a brain tumor when I was 13. And I was sure, if I could, just keep her talking and awake until the ambulance came, that she would be okay. At first she was scared. Very scared, because she did not fully understand what was happening to her. The disease. That goddamn awful disease. Of all the horrible, damnable things it did, that was the worst. Yet, as the color started to fade from her cheeks, she began to become more peaceful, and even a little more lucid. I begged her, and I called back again and again. I even ran out to the road in the black of night, hoping to see the lights, but it was just the Appalachian night and the crickets. I knew it then, but I didn't want to believe it. 45 minutes. 45 minutes is the time it takes for an ambulance to come from the closest town, and at night, they keep a limited fleet of 2 due to budget costs. That's what generational poverty is. Holding your mom for 45 minutes and screaming at her to just keep talking to you, even if it doesn't make sense, because some rich bastards don't want to invest in a company in a small town, or because some asshole wants to balance the state's budget so he can make tax breaks for big coal. Generational poverty is watching the people you love die very slowly in your arms while you can do absolutely nothing about it. Nothing. Not a goddamn thing. And yet knowing that they would want you to carry on, even if you must carry on here in the same struggle that took them. Generational poverty is the death of the human spirit by dollars and cents. And then, while I am not 100% positive on this, willing to bet, closes out on a picture of Coyote's mom, which, ma'am, you raised a hell of a son. Awesome gentleman, amazing individual. You did fucking right. And won't go into it right now, but not exactly the same, and definitely different context, but absolutely feel you on that one, dude. I understand. Not quite as bad. Nowhere near as bad. But in the context of being with a loved one as they pass. I'm not going to sit and try and compare it, but I have sympathy, and I understand loss. I'm going to go ahead and give a positive react to that one. That was, did not know that was where that was going to wind up going entirely. Glad I read it, though. again reinforce, please, 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 if you are enjoying this read through and you've enjoyed any of these read throughs, please go through to his Medium page. Again, link will be in the description, and give some algorithmic bumping to these, and read it yourself. Go back through it yourself. This is solid work here. I want to see more success driven this man's way. He fucking deserves it. All right. Okay, that is 2 down. All right. Next one. The Redneck Brawl is decadent and depraved. This one is from March 22nd, 2023. Starts out with a sign, "Beware of Coyote." Good deal. The hills of Pikeville, Kentucky have long been the staging ground for bloody and brutal conflict. Stir fry. These conflicts are spawned in no small part by territorial dispute, property theft, and some deep-seated need in the human consciousness to seek out that which we would be much happier. That which we would be much happier putting soundly to bed under the warm, fuzzy blanket of civility. It's also home to a low point in the American consciousness, where our most depraved and lizard-brained proclivities pool and swirl with a heady mix of poverty, desperation, and good old all-American educational system collapse. The tale of depravity of the Redneck Brawl does not begin at the C.W. Fieldhouse, nor did it draw its first wet and ragged breaths in the dark hollows where men with badges fear to tread, or the miles-deep holes carved into mountains where the very earth whispers men's deaths as they haul coal to the surface. The name may have sprung from 2 somewhat admittedly sketchy gentlemen, if the word gentleman was used loosely and with reckless abandon, and certainly the concept of beating one another half to death for money was nothing new. But the origin? The root of the decadently exploitative depravity? No. It begins a little more than 100 years prior with a fight that would have much longer and much more lethal consequences than anything I'd see here today. So, okay, I'm going to take a quick pause. The Redneck Brawl is decadent and depraved. I thought this was going to be commenting on some sort of cultural concept of a redneck brawl. Is this actually referencing a thing called the Redneck Brawl? I'm getting that impression here. Oh, coffee good. Coffee everywhere. But yeah, I'm getting that impression that this is actually a thing. So okay, let's carry on. Mingo and Pike County are kissing cousins, separated only by state lines and a strange tribal energy that normally lays dormant, and has, with few exceptions, done so since roughly 1891. This is Hatfield and McCoy country. Mingo County, located on the West Virginia side of the line and home for the Redneck Brawl, had been Hatfield territory. Pike County, its neighbor, was once the seat of the McCoy clan. A mostly forgotten, but bloody and utterly senseless violent footnote in American history that has become not synonymous with not only murder, but a grim, and some would say accurate, depiction of the Appalachian temperament. The proprietors of the Redneck Brawl, whose names shall remain omitted from this text for fear of warrants, orders for child support, and unpaid bribes to athletic commissions across the region, have chosen to capitalize on this bloody bit of history by tracking down 2 survivors of the infamous clans. Not only that, but they would be guests of honor. Oh no. They would not be guests of honor. No. They would be contestants. That's right. They would recreate the famous feud for the low price of just $25. And for the low price of $25, you could see it. But wait, there's more. Not only had they tracked down these 2 souls from the depths of poverty and obscurity, not only had they persuaded them through means of cash, drugs, or possibly simply the tantalizing prospect of local fame into fighting, they were women. In the modern era of Ronda Rousey, Holly Holmes, Amanda Nunes, and Clarissa Shields, this might seem like old hat, but this is Appalachia, and the novelty of such a bout has not lost its shine. especially when the two competitors come steeped in a mythos all their own and seemingly have little to no remaining shame or dignity. Modern Appalachia is woefully lacking in shame or dignity, as the two are almost exclusively known to be luxuries afforded only by the slim margins of those wealthy enough to buy clean their pedigrees. No such person would be attending the Redneck Brawl, though I suspected that more than a few had ordered the sad affair from the local cable companies, and planned to sit around the glowing screens of their televisions, laughing merrily from their affluent neighborhoods. One could almost imagine them huddled together over popcorn, some well-to-do couple after the kids have gone to bed, chuckling and feeling like Oxford-educated scientists watching some species of particularly dull ape bash themselves to death with stones. The titular contestants, one Mariana Hatfield, age 23, and Topanga Tackett, age 25, were anything but athletes. Neither, in so much as I know, had ever received any formal training, nor did they belong to any local gymnasium, of which there were exactly 2 in a 150-mile radius. They were hardscrabble and rough around the edges, lacking any manner of tact or self-awareness, and self-taught in the ways of fisticuffs and the arts of defense. Neither was conventionally attractive, and the promoters had compensated for this by booking a ring girl fight on the undercard, but nobody was paying to see that. This is where their similarities ended. As revealed in the short promotional video she had recorded at the behest of promoters to help stir up ticket sales, Mariana Hatfield had long, stick-straight platinum blonde hair and eyes the color of old Coke bottles. She was a medium height, roughly 5'6" or so, and listed at 180 pounds, but had the demeanor of the rowdy women that you can almost always catch a bouncer dragging out of a honky-tonk bar with 2 handfuls of some other woman's hair. I could not be for certain. Nothing was for certain with this little slice of Appalachian bloodsport pie that was the Appalachian Brawl and its contestants. But something told me that somewhere out there was some poor bastard's Camaro with 4 slashed tires if he'd crossed her, and burning in his front lawn if he'd crossed her twice. Can I take a quick pause and just go like, Jesus Christ, dude, the imagery. That is, I know, Bones, right? It is really good imagery. That is really well written. That is fantastic. Her opponent, chosen as much by blood as by the 2 aforementioned sketchy promoters, was an altogether different matter. Topanga Tackett was 213 pounds and stood exactly 5'3", and to the casual observer, one may have believed she was at a distinct disadvantage. She lacked heavily in reach, and while neither appeared to have endured any cardio may well have been lethal in the case of Topanga Tackett. Her hair was black and frizzy, and pulled back from her face in a loose ponytail. There was little energy or sass in her. Indeed, she seemed the sort of hard woman that might have been at home running a saloon on some far end of the old West frontier. Despite her smaller stature, her fists were almost frighteningly large, and I was sure when she smiled a toothless grin into the camera that one blow would shatter her opponent into pieces. If her opponent had the demeanor of a rowdy bar patron, then she carried herself like the sort of lady who might well fight off a black bear from the garbage with a garden rake. Theirs was not the only promotional video gathered and released in hopes of stirring up sales. There were as many as 24 other fighters assembled to represent both Kentucky and West Virginia. Some of these were downright hilarious, including one that featured a man calling himself Big Hazard and representing Eastern Kentucky, who danced and gyrated like a male stripper while drinking beer and proclaiming the certainty of his victory. I'm honestly picturing, like... Is anyone familiar with, like, the Japanese dude that was out there, Hard Gay? Like, have you ever... Look up Hard Gay on YouTube. Like, it was an entire thing. Razor Ramon Hard Gay. It was a thing. I'm visualizing Hard Gay with a cowboy hat. And, like, I want to say a Coors, but I don't know if Coors is actually the Appalachian choice. Does anyone know the Appalachian choice? Put that in the comments. What is the Appalachian choice of beer? Please just give me some engagement. I love you. Thank you. Anyway, okay, back in. The others were of a darker variety. The most notable one was from a man simply calling himself Mace. Okay. He was a large man with a shaved head who punched himself wordlessly in the face while staring blankly into the camera. I don't know why that's making me laugh so much. Okay, wow. This was an actual thing. I missed this entirely. What the fuck? I'm kind of glad I missed this, because this does sound... You may think that such tactics, coupled with a few radio broadcasts and the plastering of filters across Pikeville and Williamson, would not generate that much interest, especially in such a clearly exploitative and degrading contest. That the people of the small church-going communities would not be swayed so easily as to sign away their health, livelihood, and likeness for a chance at $1,000 and the opportunity to be on pay-per-view in limited markets. No, I would not. Sadly. But if you did, you would be wrong. The crowd was so deep and so thick outside of the arena that the staff had already preemptively set up large televisions in the face of the growing certainty that the fire marshal would soon start turning people away. So many were determined to see these contests that Mingo County Police, known for their free and easy manner with billy clubs and trumped-up charges, feared the possibility of riots if placations were not made. The potential for blood was in the air and was already turning people nasty, getting under the skin and working its way towards the back of their lizard brains. Those, like myself, that did get inside did so with no small amount of gratitude for the fact that the door would not be shut in our face before we were lost to the jostling, roaring masses. As I looked out over the crowd of sweaty, angry, and belligerent drunks assembled for the Redneck Brawl, I became increasingly certain of a few things. Firstly, this was more than a little exploitative. The crowd was not a bad lot, not at all. Most of them, I'd wager nearly 70%, were honest and genuinely good. Hard-working folks from neighboring towns, and locals who just wanted a good time to break up the monotony of small-town living. A little behind the times, perhaps. Politically incorrect from a lack of exposure more than malice, sure. But bad people? Far from it. Merely a blue-collar slice of America that was running 20 years behind the rest of the country. However, that percentage was being dramatically influenced by the other 30%, who were anything but honest or good. That percentage consisted of drug fiends, hellraisers, and mountain-born madmen who would as soon chew up a book with their teeth for the fiber as they would read it. The whole writhing mass had been well lubricated with copious alcohol and the tantalizing promise from the battles to come, along with glimpses of flesh from the ring girls. Sex, death, and violence really got small-town blood pumping. There's a growing bloodlust in the air, a low-level madness that snuck down into your lungs with every breath that smelled of sweat, cigarette smoke, and stale beer. Cops roamed the crowd, hauling up the occasional malcontent who got caught trying to push through a sale on camera, and occasionally breaking up fights in the crowd. The whole thing was one thrown chair away from a riot. Well, maybe not really, but the spirit was there. "Kill that Chevy truck-driving cocksucker!" A man in the crowd wearing a black cowboy hat screamed as he threw his paper cup of beer at the barrier that separated the spectators from the action. Kill a man over his truck preference? Seemed odd to me, but not unbelievable. Nothing was unbelievable at this point. I'd witnessed a known drug dealer in a blue shirt get beaten into a cowering heap, and a man who was rumored to be much too fond of chickens commit what may well have been a legal murder. Death to a man over his truck? Sure, it made as much sense as anything else in the strange haze of eager madness. Lastly, and most importantly, because it would stick with me long into the night, even after I tried to wash it down with rum and the best grass that money could buy, no one had taken out more fighters that evening than a surprise Hep C screening a few days beforehand. The true winner would be modern medical testing and the various divorce lawyers of those disqualified contestants who suddenly had to explain to their spouses how they wound up with hepatitis C. The fights were much what you expect, a great deal of wild swinging, hugging, and of course, a bevy of knockouts and stoppages. One man brought a live chicken to the ring, and his deep familiarity with the animal, expressed with loving kisses and gentle rubs of his cheek, may have created the impression that he shared a connection that was deeper than most with the animal. He strutted around the ring, holding it high over his head, then proceeded to beat the high holy hell out of a fresh-faced boy from West Virginia who must have been at least 10 years his junior and had aspirations of being a hip-hop artist like Eminem. Another man was beaten so severely in the stomach he began to cry openly in the ring and waved off his opponent while the crowd mercilessly mocked him and shouted any number of insults at his manhood. Strangely, he'd stayed standing through all the beating and had not once fallen to the mat. It simply hadn't occurred to the bastard to fall down and play dead. Afterwards, his opponent gave him a loving hug and sent him on his way, and it was here that I once again began to get the feeling there was something wrong with the whole ordeal, but nobody else in the crowd seemed to see it. Before the main event, those two sketchy promoters from earlier had arranged for Ring Girl of the Night contest. Each ring girl, all locals much like the fighters, would parade around the ring one final time, and the girl who received the loudest applause was set to win $500. We were deep into the night, and the crowd around me had grown increasingly drunker and increasingly wilder. Men hooted and hollered and catcalled, and one young man jumped onto his chair and grabbed his crotch before yelling out, "Bring 'em on!" His friends quickly hauled him down as security set withering eyes upon them. The contest ended prematurely, however, when the third ring girl to compete got up and removed her robe to reveal that her bathing suit was painted on. T, the sight of which provoked one man to nearly jump the rail. And he was quickly escorted outside, and I'm sure not beaten severely at all, by some of Mingo County's finest. The crowd was no longer simply roaring, it was howling, and the very halls of the field house seemed as if they might burst with the desperate need for some barbaric release that had been building all night. It was time for the main event. I'd like to tell you, the contest was a beautiful but ugly scrap, something like the down and dirty action sequences you see in television or movies. I would like to tell you that they felt each other out, and then commenced to an honorable and well-fought contest of skill and athleticism. The reality, however, is that this was the Redneck Brawl, with smoke dancing around the lights and beer sloshing on the floor, and a whole building fit to burst with a wild lunatic's desire for violent revelry. These were brawlers plucked from the dark mountains, with histories penned in blood that, depending on your point of view, were either sterling examples of their breed or parodies of their people. They clashed like the dented, used vehicles used in demolition derbies. They fought with the grace of a drunken longshoreman, and showed the fleet footwork of a man who recently had his legs crushed to death beneath a steamroller. At one point, Tackett managed to loop a haymaker that connected squarely with the bridge of her Hatfield opponent's nose, and at the first sight of blood, the crowd let out a whooping cheer. The nose was broken, but the young, rowdy woman with the platinum blonde hair only took a pause long enough for the doctors to confirm this matter and ask if she wished to continue. She did, enthusiastically, which brought another roaring cheer from the crowd. The two met again at the center of the ring, and this time it was not a matter for a single lumbering haymaker, but a bevy of punches delivered by a Hatfield that peppered her opponent across the cheeks, chin, and forehead, and sent her reeling back and onto the ropes. Only the sound of the ring bell and the fact the ropes had provided support allowed Tackett to continue on into the final round. There were shrill screams of support from both sides of the crowd for both fighters. Each woman had brought her friends and family with them, and in between yelling encouragement for their respective friends, they would shout obscenities at one another. They shuffled out of their corners at the beginning of the second round, Hatfield with both hands up in what was, in all fairness, a remarkable imitation of the professional stance, and Tackett with one arm dropped low and the other half cocked. There was no circling, nor was there any dancing about for position or angles. They collided with the same wild-eyed determination to end it all in one blow as they had in the first. And this time it was not one, but two quick strikes that turned Tackett's head left, then right again, then sent her collapsing to the canvas with such a complete loss of function that the referee immediately called for the bell. The crowd, a Hatfield crowd, exploded in a celebration of cheers, whoops, shouts, and whistles. After the fight, a young man with blonde tips in his hair and a tan that could only have come from a bottle slid between the ropes with a microphone in his hand. His smile was bright, and the spray tan coloring only made that bright whiteness of his teeth seem that much more unnatural. He was dressed in snappy black trousers, with a sky blue polo shirt that made me think of some attendant at a weekend resort in Florida. Surrounded by drunk rednecks, working-class men wanting to blow off steam, and plenty of good old boys, there was never anyone more uncomfortable than a man with frosted blonde tips wearing a damn sky blue polo in their midst. That was a great fight. Let's hear it from Mariana, everyone. Come on, stand up and make some noise. He lied poorly, but the crowd was too hot to notice. Mariana, her platinum hair in tight braids and her broken nose leaking blood down her face, almost seemed bashful now that she was the center of the spotlight and had won the day. She laughed uneasily, then seemed decided, hell with it, and gave a big whooping cheer of her own that produced a tired, fake laugh from the Axe body spray commercial that was giving the interview, and another cheer from the crowd that was now smitten. Do you have anyone you want to thank? Sky Blue McFrosty Tips asked. Mariana paused and seemed to consider it, before wiping the blood from her busted nose on the back of a glove that still hadn't been cut from her hand, and giving her answer. I want to thank my mama. I want to thank Jesus. And I just want to say, goddamn, for a bitch with no teeth, she sure can fight. Given the success of the event, and the revenue generated for both towns of Pikeville and Williamson, as well as our two sketchy promoters, it seems likely that this is far from the last of such contests. Indeed, should one find themselves traveling the poverty-encrusted backwoods of coal country, deep into the beating heart of Appalachia, one may stumble upon such wild and uproarious contests, and even purchase a ticket for themselves. Be forewarned, though, dear reader, the Redneck Brawl is decadent and depraved. Okay, wow, that was actually a fascinating read. I had never heard of that. That's interesting. Though reading through it, like, I know there's part of me, I feel like normal convention for most people reading that sort of thing would be like, this is insane. This doesn't happen. And while I would not say that I myself am cut from the same cloth that Coyote here is. Again, definitely cousins, cousins, different area. And, I've seen my own fair share of redneck country and individuals. And no, this isn't even remotely surprising. It's honestly really well. I've not been to an event like this. I can absolutely see how an event like that would go. And this was strikingly well written. Like, I can easily visualize everything being described here as a thing. Shit. I don't have a lot really I can say on that. Is that really actually a thing? Please confirm that for me, somebody. I mean, I'm going to look it up after, but like, Jesus. I did, honestly, I liked, one thing I really enjoyed, or I liked, in particular about this article, was the commentary on the individuals that are present in the crowd of lagging behind 20 years from the rest of the country. That's something about that phrasing and that insight and that awareness. That's actually a really positive thing. I'm not going to harp on it. But that phrasing really got me. I really appreciated seeing that. That was really good. And I think I can get one more in. What do we got? Yeah. Okay. All right. One last one. The Moron Beat. All right. This is from April 3rd, 2003. It has been more than 13 days since news of the indictments against the 45th Swine-in-Chief, Donald J. Trump, had begun to gather over Mar-a-Lago like the dark and ominous sky that precedes a deadly tornado. The very air of America itself had begun to supercharge with potential, and there's nothing that sets the American people aflame like potential. Potential for good, potential for bad, potential for profit, potential for fame, potential for war, often used interchangeably with potential for oil, and very rarely, unless gilded by victory, the potential for peace. If you were one of thinking sane, thinking sane, the sane thinking, of which I find myself at least partially a member in principle, if not always in practice. This potential manifested as a weed-like hope for joy and justice, a desperate scrap of optimism that had survived not just Trump, but the rise of the neoconservative movement. Once one bastard goes down, it sends a message to the world that all the bastards can, with tremendous effort, be toppled from their golden thrones. I like to call it the theorem of the roasted swine. Not everyone is up for the challenge of butchering a hog, sticking his corpse on a spit, and slow roasting him with an apple in his mouth while he stared at you in dead horror. But almost everyone loves the taste of swine. Once the meat is done, everyone wants to take a big and juicy bite. I myself celebrated the news of the indictment with drinking, merriment, the consumption of cannabis, and several long moments of awkward and utterly disgraceful humping of the air. As one does, as a true American. That's my sidebar. It had not been nearly long enough since Trump and his foul, red hat-wearing band of the ill-informed, the ill-dressed, and the generally just ill-dispositioned had all but demanded that Hillary Clinton be locked up for her emails. They still ranted, raved, and frothed at the mouth at the mere mention of Hunter Biden, and had cheered merrily when Kyle Rittenhouse, a young man with an AR-15 whose name deserves not the glory of print unless it's attached to the word murderer, had been acquitted. I confess, I delighted in the tears of another man, mushroom-pricked and ketchup-scented though he may have been. This person, bereft of social graces, rudimentary understanding of government, or the most basic foundations of decency, had been all it took to unleash my inner buried sadist. I had bedded beautiful women who were not as exciting as the prospect of Trump throwing a mad fit in his office and screaming at the top of his lungs at his two dim-witted sons and mail-order Slovenian bride. You have to get me out. You have to. No, wait. Let me go back. You have to get me out. You have to. I am too rich for this to happen to me. Please, someone save me. He rails and rants, his tiny hands thrust up to the sky as tears of genuine fear cut streaks through the tanning spray that gives his face that shiny, fried chicken quality. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA who stands to take the orange dragon on buffoonery, has been tight-lipped about the whole matter. While we know that the 34 charges that face former President Donald J. Trump stem from his affair with Stormy Daniels, specifically the payment of hush money that has very likely come from campaign funds, no official word has yet been given at the time of the writing. This stoic silence, while certainly helpful to the case, has served as fodder for claims of politicization. I know that word, that's saying it out loud, of our judiciary system. These claims are of course baseless and contain no shred of truth. However, I have never been one to pass a complete and total idiot and not take advantage of the situation. Welcome to the Moron Beat. What follows is a picture of a tweet from luminary Lauren Boebert. President Donald Trump was a complete shock to the system. As you can see, the system doesn't like being shocked. Now they're trying to turn things back to the way they used to be. Not on my watch. We the people are wide awake now, and we won't be going back to sleep. Fuck off. Some, like Colorado Congresswoman and professional idiot Lauren Boebert, were quick to attach themselves to the outrage without committing too strongly to any notion that might endanger her career. This move was wildly unprecedented by Boebert, who usually displays as much tact and political savvy as a hunk of cordwood. The rapid deployment of us versus them would prove vital if the idiots were to save their grand sherbet-shaded poobah. That's a nice phrase. Sherbet-shaded poobah. Boebert's desperate need to play the starring role in some twisted version of the Hunger Games, crossed with Idiocracy, already had her chomping at the bit to stir up the already toxic base that followed her. Of course, she was not alone in this endeavor. The congressional representative from Ohio, and rumored first person to have the results of a personality test come back negative, Jim Jordan, was not to be outdone by the likes of Lauren Boebert. Oh no, Jordan's mastery of the stupid arts and years of training in being obtuse, homophobic, bundled of fears and corruption were more than up to the task of proving to Trump that they cared nothing for the legal system, nothing for justice, and would happily offer fellatio to the devil himself for a shred of political support. I'm going to comment right now that this is the first time reading these dispatches that I am upset because it means I have to read aloud the words of Jim motherfucking Jordan. I will continue in good faith and because it is there. But I am not happy about this because it's Jim motherfucking Jordan. Fuck. Picture from Twitter thread. Jim Jordan. Alvin Bragg allowed Charles Lindsay, a notorious gang member, to walk free from 4 felony charges if Lindsay attended 5 counseling sessions. But if you're a Republican running for president, you're held to a different standard of justice. Here we see Jordan blatantly claiming that the standards of justice in America are skewed towards the prosecution and arrest of rich white men, and that gang members, which is code for black people, are allowed to simply walk free. As to the best of my knowledge, at the time of this writing at least, the Red Skull is not actually real, and thus not accepting applications for future henchmen. But that little detail won't stop Jordan. This may appear, on the surface, to be merely racist and tone-deaf remark made by a man with a long history of being a goddamn moron, but it is actually a racist and tone-deaf remark made by a sniveling sycophant with a long history of being a goddamn moron. That said, these two were only the tip of the stupid iceberg, and like all icebergs, only 30% or less of the ship-sinking fuckers actually poked out of the water. Trump's greatest source of support was, of course, the poor fools who he had conned into believing his dirty bag of tricks was bottomless. Not all of them had been terrible people. Many of them were simply confused or frightened by progress. Others had been loners who found a sense of community among their fellow fools. And a few more might just have been woefully stupid. The most vocal, however, were some of the very worst of the worst. These were apex assholes, seasoned racists, and angry men for whom sex with a willing, unpaid partner was less likely than winning their state lottery. They were the screaming sergeants of Trump's army, and their words were the artillery shells with which the side of the angels would be bombarded. You're making me read Tucky Timbo Carlson's words. All right. Twitter post picture. Tucker Carlson. It's not just Trump who's their target. It's Trump's voters. The Biden administration is in the process of preparing yet another law enforcement dragnet of more than 1,000 nonviolent January 6th protesters. Here we witness one of those brave sergeants rallying the troops. And by brave sergeant rallying the troops, I mean Tucker Carlson. By fear-mongering in a desperately transparent attempt to gin up some damn outrage for his master. One can almost be forgiven watching him grovel and beg, heedless of how many people get hurt or how much of what actually comes out of his mouth is true, for forgetting that he was on the record talking about how much he despised the former president. This makes the feat of hurling misinformation like Molotov cocktails at the truth almost an impressive act of hypocrisy and shamelessness. You may also notice the distinct lack of awareness that if we went after all the Nazis, Klan members, homosexuals, and religious extremists, we would actually be going after Trump supporters. It's like if we went after all of those, we would be going after Trump supporters. Alas, as of the time of this writing, the FBI has neither surrounded the Ku Klux Klan, nor has a law been passed that makes the hunting of Nazis, with the same sort of clubs used on baby seals, legal. Which means that, if nothing else, Carlson's long list of blatantly untrue statements remains unbroken. I may dislike the man immensely, but even I had to give it to him. If there was a hell, he'd have Joseph Goebbels' job in a matter of days. These ripples of stupidity should have prepared us for what was coming when the actual indictment came down from on high, but I fear that nothing could serve as adequate preparation for the chain reaction that was, even then, rolling down the tracks toward America. Trump's base had been waiting for a chance, any chance at all, to openly feel persecuted and attacked by the government. They had watched with covetous eyes as others made great strides in equality, and lamented the fact that they themselves never got the glory. Many on the left had mistaken this for merely a wish to maintain control, but it was more than that. They wanted control, but also the empathy and comfort afforded to victims. They wanted to hold the billy club and feel justified in using it. When April 3rd rolled around, and it was time for Trump to leave the Mar-a-Lago, like some grotesque version of the groundhog leaving its burrow, to determine by way of his shadow the coming weather, and surrender himself to authorities, he had promised us doom, the collapse of our country into a third world status, and a mighty uprising of his followers who, cloaked in righteousness, would take to the streets. Instead, we got Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, proud representative of Georgia's 14th District and actual black hole of faith in humanity, going to New York in order to vehemently protest the arraignment. MTG's loyalty to... Ooh, MTG. I don't think I've heard that one for her before. I like it. The loyalty to Trump is without question, as even his own children would not actually hit the streets in service to their father. Some have speculated Some have speculated that this is because Greene hopes to secure for herself a vice presidential position, gambling that the solution to the Sarah Palin problem the GOP once faced is, in fact, to go from airhead to I question if this person is on meth regularly. We should all commend Greene for the hardships she endured that day, which included being provoked into a delusional rant where she accused the U.S. Congresswoman of New York's 14th Congressional District, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, of being mastermind behind an online trolling account. This AOC... Oh, sorry, this is a Twitter post from Marjorie Taylor Greene. This AOC, Zaza Demon is your burner account? That's a disturbing name. Excited to see a unhinged trans murder a member of the conservative press, Matt Walsh? Yes, that is a demonic name. Or demonic, so the name fits. What? You know what? I'm not even going to try and go back and reread that. Fuck her. If Trump is some false idol, around which the GOP and its supporters now dance like mad, unhinged lunatics, then Greene has anointed herself their high priestess. A woman who is in service to herself and her own vapidity above all else, who has no need for logic or fact if they do not serve her. Qualities perhaps best described as more fitting a hungry beast clawing desperately for scraps of political clout that might fall from Trump's table than a person. A lightning rod for the stupid, a conspiracy theorist, and the barely concealed outright racist to gather in the eventuality that Trump should fall, and a heat shield against his own blathering with her own cacophony of ignorance. As Trump departed, however, there was no madness, nor chaos, nor widespread collapse of America. A quick glance out my window revealed that, even here in Kentucky, where our own political servants had all bent the knee to the anus-mouthed swine-in-chief, all seemed peaceful. While there were smatterings of supporters for his departing motorcade, there did not appear to be that many rallying rebels set to throw the whole system over in his name. If one were to hazard a guess and wish to be a little cruel, they might contemplate the reason being that those supporters had all given up their worldly possessions and thus couldn't attend. Trump, being a grifter first and some sort of repulsive human-toad hybrid second, had of course been calling for donations from the very beginning. Like most billionaire geniuses, he needed a cult of rednecks who hung off his every word to pay for his legal fees. This proves that not only will the desperately ignorant give up their very livelihoods to these sort of con men, and thus must be protected, but also that a swine of Trump's caliber cannot help but gorge himself, even on the way to the slaughterhouse. Now all that remains is waiting for the wheels of justice to turn. If one was to look towards the maelstrom of sound bites, video clips, and 120-character vomitous regurgitations on social media, one may believe the world is ending or the battle is won. There is postulating that this charge is merely meant to open the way for deeper and more fatal cuts, and promises a bitter resistance to the halls of justice actually applying its craft to a wealthy white political candidate. Trump has positioned himself as the modern Jefferson Davis, uniting the world's the worst and ugliest elements of the American public behind him. An orange-skinned Pied Piper for those who have at long last given over to the worst instincts and elements of humanity, and thus no longer can afford to go back to what they were, for the shame is simply too great. The anti-intellectual has risen in full force behind him, but there is a side effect to this alignment that Trump himself had not counted on. That the stupid, by and large, were a cowardly lot. There would be no uprising for his benefit, no amassing of arms, no action-packed liberation. His fate would be decided in the cold halls of the American court system, where, at best, the odds for justice were 50-50. The coin flip was better odds than any of us had seen since the orange buffoon had risen to power, though. It was better odds than some of us had meeting people who accepted us for who we were. It was better odds than many of us had for keeping family members who had fallen into the strange cult around the man. And it was certainly better odds than we'd had of seeing justice before this day. When I'd first heard the news, I'd wondered if it would pay off this time. 10 days later, pounding out the article for the dispatches, I still do. To trust the courts to make the right decision feels a little too much like trusting an ex-lover who has cheated and now swears they will be forever faithful. Still, it's nice to dream when you're covering the Moron Beat. I wake from my dreams of justice, honor, integrity, and the restoration of the American spirit by launching fascist pigs via catapult into the heart of the sun to find that a new day has dawned. A fresh coat of blue sky, a changing of the great bulb of the sun, and of course a parade of idiots lining the roads as if they were mourners to some garish funeral procession. Which is fitting, because in a way that's exactly what they are, these supporters of the former president who have gathered on the roadsides in order to show their support for Donald Trump are also there to mourn the death of decency. The artificially pumpkin-pigmented professor of dumbonomics and 45th president of the United States of America was, of course, handling it about as well as could possibly be expected. From Trump himself, heading to Lower Manhattan. No, let me go back. Headed to Lower Manhattan, the courthouse. Seems so surreal. Wow, they're going to arrest me. Can't believe this is happening in America. MAGA. While I have no conclusive proof, I was informed by absolutely no one, except for the fictitious CIA agents working in my brain, that this post to Donald's dollar store version of Twitter was actually made only after several ounces of tranquilizer had been placed into Donald's KFC. This was standard operating procedure when the Donald was called upon to defend his indefensible actions. The worry of those behind the scenes was that he would begin hurling his own feces at any nearby passerby, or become frightened by the loud noises and instantly soil himself. If this was the case, then certainly a little surrealness can be forgiven. Of course, one cannot speak of surreal flinging shit without once again circling back to Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was April 4th, 2023, and the Congresswoman from Georgia's 14th District had arrived in New York to protest what she believed to be the unfair persecution of Donald Trump. She had arrived with her usual rancor and raucous belligerence, assured of her righteousness and the fact that she could not only do as she pleased, but say whatever she wished, regardless of its factual basis or who was hurt as a result. This was her usual MO, the deployment of herself into the center of a controversy where she could spit out the most vile and reprehensibly ignorant statements while being praised for it. However, there was one critical detail of that plan that Green had not accounted for. This was fucking New York, baby. And this looks as though it's a text message. Action alert, Tuesday. Emergency noise demo. New York is louder than hate speech. On Tuesday, Marjorie Taylor Greene is holding a rally Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. in advance of Trump's arraignment. Come make some noise to shut down her hate, lies, and nonstop ridiculousness. Bring instruments, pots and pans, whatever you got. We'll have whistles too. 10 a.m. at CollectCon Park, 130 Leonard Street, NYC. This is a call to action. Spread the word. In Georgia, Marjorie Taylor Greene may have enjoyed a certain amount of celebrity and indulgence. There were characters in the Georgia political scene who would have been happy to reignite the Civil War, and who damned well thought the psychotic Foozler? I'm not familiar with that word. That thought the psychotic Foozler would generate a cult of personality. Maybe she had. This was New York, though, and not Georgia, and while racism and intolerance still existed in the Big Apple, it was not in sufficient numbers to make Marjorie's visit a pleasant one. She was driven from the street by hecklers who hurled insults, shouted painful truths, and banged on pots to disrupt her hateful message. Musicians stood in the streets and played instruments just to drown out the filth that fell from her lips, and for one moment, a thinking man might have found pride in his country once more. It is said that Marjorie Taylor Greene left a vaguely Klansman-shaped cloud of dust behind her as she ran the road runner hauling ass out of town. Well, she ran like the road runner hauling ass out of town. However, there has been no photographic evidence to support this claim as of yet. Then came the actual arraignment itself. Trump faced 34 felony counts of falsifying business records. Naturally, in order to sustain the great grift, the rat bastard, along with his lawyers, opted to plead not guilty. Now, as a quick note, just to be mindful, I believe this is the case everywhere, you generally want to claim either no contest or not guilty. Because if you wind up saying guilty, and you accept that that is the assertion being made by the legal system, then you cannot go through processes later on for, say, having it expunged or having it sealed or anything of that nature. But if you proclaim not guilty or no contest, then you can. I know that varies. I think that varies from state to state, but there's your legal bit. Now, while this should have been a moment of sublime joy, it had been tainted by the Manhattan DA's office collapsing under the weight of political pressure when it had come to the particulars of Trump's arrest. There would be no perp walk, there would be no handcuffs at all, though this is rumored to possibly be owed to the fact that none were small enough to fit. And there would be no mugshot. We wouldn't want to damage the reputation of a man who coined the phrase, grab them by the pussy. Is this the end of Trump? Hardly. The great yam of hell's ninth ring will return to his fortress of narcissism in Mar-a-Lago. He will resume the consumption of large quantities of uppers, downers, cheeseburgers, Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the souls of orphans. Already, his base is galvanized, and polling suggests that the arrest has oddly cemented Trump as the Republican candidate for president. This leaves Americans with the one thing they are least comfortable with, a choice that they must make. The great beast of fascism promises to come at last, and it will no longer be constrained by the niceties of a society that it has only the most bitter disdain for. A clear choice must be made, a call answered, a single moment spared by each of us, to do what is in our power to do to stop this madness. Vote. Protest. Take to the streets if one must, but know this one vital rule of the world I have gleaned in the dark hills of Appalachia. A beast like this one may seem cartoonish and easily mocked, but it is vain, and the scars placed upon it by moments of shame will burn brightly in its mind. If Trump returns to power, there can be no question of his vengeance. There can be no mistaking what his intentions will be. Already, many of his cohorts are calling for the extermination of the trans community, with the confidence they did not have before the destruction of Roe v. Wade. We shall all stand together and overcome this beast, or we shall all find ourselves working the Moron Beat for a long, long time. That did not have a single clap. I am giving that a clap. Fuck yes. That was right there. Yes. Love it. Because, I actually particularly on that too. I like that last stretch of it. Calling out Americans making a choice. And the framing of that. Because it is true. That is a thing to bear in mind, is a lot of times people that kind of spouse the plainly divisive, self-important rhetoric, you can see this in people. God, I hope you can fucking see this in people. There's a certain kind of person that is just a mockery of actual cooperativeness. And unfortunately, that kind of person can often be found in the halls of power in America. It sucks. Because it's also very persuasive to people. Because it's a manipulator and it's a liar. And when you abandon dignity and integrity in the interest of... Well, you know what? And honestly, it's not to compare them to individuals that, say, went coal mining to support their families. That was a selfless act for something of deep value to them. But fundamentally, they were working and suffering and casting away elements of their humanity for something that mattered to them. And there can be a certain honor seen in that for what they were trying to do with the Appalachian coal miners and other individuals that do similar sorts of dangerous work. You can see an honor in that, and while it's horrifying that those existed, that was a thing that did exist and still does, you can understand that and can see a certain degree of sad nobility. But the underlying principle that they are doing something, they are sacrificing of self, a portion of their humanity, for a goal that means something to them. The same thing is done for this kind of shitbrick. Trump has no personal dignity. Individuals like him, a number of which were mentioned in the course of this article, they also sacrifice elements of their humanity. Dignity, integrity, reliability, care about their fellow human being. They sacrifice that for something important to them, their own sense of importance and power. Now, where it comes from, you can really sit and debate on that one all fucking day. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter, because all it does is it consumes us. It leaves the rest of us drained. It erodes the very foundation of everything that we have and that makes society functional. I'm not really in a mindset to sit and wax philosophical at the moment. I know, for those of you that know me, shocker. But I've also been reading for the past hour and a half, and my voice is kind of tired, and I still have the remainder of oh, will it show? I have the remainder of this very delicious rice, and I think it's hamburger. It's a delicious stir fry that I really want to go ahead and finish eating, courtesy of Every Plate. #not spawn, and my roommate making that. It is tasty. I want to finish it. So again, I'm not going to wind up waxing further philosophical and political here. They suck. They're shit bricks. They are destroying everything that they touch, and they cast it with a foulness that is most foul. Whew, okay, yeah, definitely. I'm wearing myself out right now. All right. So I did get through, 4 of these? I think it was 4 of these. I stopped counting. Got through, we're going to say 4. Got through 4 of these, as well as a bonus special bit at the very beginning regarding some recent news that's going on as of today. Really hope that you enjoyed it. If you stuck it out this far, please give the video a like, toss in a comment, give it a bit of engagement. It makes it look better to YouTube's algorithm. And I'm gonna have the links to these articles in the description. Please go to these articles, give it some views, let it get some extra retention, give it some engagement, give some comments if you want, give it a clap. Just, show the dude some love. I absolutely adore all of this. And there will be at least one more dispatches read through. I know that I'm going to be doing that. But that may not be the next one, for reasons, but, we'll see how that goes. So if the next one isn't dispatches, don't worry. There still will be another one later on down the line. But I want to kind of set that aside for just a wee bit because reasons. Yeah, I think that's all I got. So, thank you for sticking around this far. And love each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. And I hope the day finds you well whenever it is that you're hearing this. And insert supportive statement here. All right. Later.